week's drive, we look at a rebellion on the track, go along for the ride at Daytona, see the new Italian Challenge, and ride high with Raga. All this and more in this week's Drive. We start with news of the discontent brewing between Formula One teams and the sport's governing body, the FIA, and its autocratic chief, Max Mosley, over the recent spate of new regulations. Two respected team principals, Sir Frank Williams of Williams Grand Prix and Ron Dennis of McLaren, have initiated legal proceedings over what they say are hasty and ill-conceived rule changes which will reduce the spectacle of Formula One.
We consider that the Concord Agreement, which is a tripartite contract, a legal document, has been sidestepped deliberately by Mr. Mosley, the president of the FIA, in order to unilaterally impose upon us sporting and technical changes that are not properly observing due process in that contract. Any dispute, any legal dispute in breach or alleged breach of contract involves the use of arbitration in a Swiss International Chamber of Commerce court, and that's what we are seeking to do.
Right side, please.
McLaren drivers Kimi Raikkonen and David Coulthard haven't had the machinery to deliver the championships which team boss Ron Dennis used to take almost for granted.
Well, obviously I endorse what Frank says, and you know, this is the process laid down within the regulatory documentation of which is the Concord Agreement, and we are following that process because we have a passion for motor racing, and we think that what has actually taken place is fundamentally wrong and not in the interests of Grand Prix racing.
Why do you say that the FIA's proposals will make the sport less safe when they say precisely the opposite, that it'll make it more safe?
Well, at Williams we take safety very, very seriously. I should also say the FIA have many years taken seriously the business of safety as well, and they have introduced over the last 10 years some extremely difficult, tough crash test figures, which we have great difficulty in achieving, but they have made the cars much safer.
The FIA's view in respect of safety, and this is, I think, an opinion that we both very much share, is in direct contrast to that of our technical directors, and in fact the vast majority of technical directors from the other Grand Prix teams. At a recent technical working group, that is the title that we give this organisation, all but one agreed that these changes would in fact lessen the safety of the Grand Prix cars, and yet the FIA chooses to ignore these experts. And as team principals, and again I think it's a view shared by other team principals, we just feel that that's not appropriate.
In the last 30 years, Williams has lost two drivers. A Williams-operated F1 car at the Dutch Grand Prix in 1970, wherein Piers Courage was killed, and more recently, Ayrton Senna was killed in 1994 at the San Marino Grand Prix. We just never ever will forget those deaths, and will, I repeat, take our seriously, arguably more seriously, our safety more seriously than anybody else.
Now, you claim that the FIA proposals will dumb down Formula One. What do you mean by that?
I've looked closely at these proposals, and what worries me for the future is Max's clear will to banish, if you like, all types of technology. However, we live in a world that is dependent upon technology. Our daily lives are, if not controlled by it, certainly facilitated by it. It's not easy, or rather it's not difficult to find many examples. A mobile telephone, how we check out at the tills at Tesco's, etc., etc. Formula One has always evolved with technology. To remove it abruptly, as Max wishes to do, we sincerely believe is going backwards in time, and I think we should all look forward.
And Ron, do you share that fear?
Oh, indeed. I mean, Formula One is the pinnacle of motorsport. It always has been and always should be. And effectively, these regulations are going to see the cars carry less levels of sophistication than some of the other lesser categories. I mean, it's just not the way to go. The manufacturers who participate in Grand Prix racing need the challenge, need the ability to demonstrate superior technology to justify their investment. And when people claim that the manufacturers are not an essential part of Grand Prix racing, they are just wrong. The simple fact is, teams come and go. The Lotuses, the Brabhams, the Tyrrells of this world, none of whom were directly related to manufacturers, came and went, as have manufacturers. And the reason that they come and go is because of the either economics of their company at the time or the economics of the sport. But the one fundamental ingredient that is always there in Formula One is that it is the pinnacle sport. It is the pinnacle of motorsport, and it has to stay that way.
What is the solution to the problems that you've highlighted today?
The first step to take regarding achieving a solution is to have more serious, profound consultation with the team principals and more probably their technical directors to plan out a long-term strategy for the sport 5 and 10 years ahead. That strategy should include all the people who participate and above all the manufacturers. I say that because there are approximately 10 car manufacturing groups in the world. 7 are active in Formula One, owning their own teams or partnering other teams. You can't say goodbye to those gentlemen. Formula One arguably would collapse. We need to have technology, we need to have plans that are affordable, but also embrace the manufacturers as well as the teams.
And Ron, am I right in thinking that part of the solution that you're calling for today is to ensure that the teams get a substantial increase in the income that comes from the commercial rights holders?
The economics of Grand Prix racing are no different to any other business. There's the income and expenditure that is associated with doing business. On the expenditure side, every single team has a vested interest in reducing cost, and we are pushing costs down. Short-term regulatory changes increase cost. Every team knows it, and the rules that are being introduced at the moment are not the exception to that. But more importantly, we have to take steps to get a greater share of the revenue of Grand Prix racing. The teams currently only enjoy less than 23% of the entire revenue. And we have to have a fairer share, a more equitable share of that income. And if we were sharing in that income at the moment, the climate that we have, where some of the smaller teams are under severe fiscal pressures, would just not be there.
Bernie Ecclestone, promoter of Formula One, criticised the team's oppositions to cost-cutting measures, saying that it was the team's failure to introduce them that forced intervention by the FIA. Max Mosley called the two teams irresponsible for undermining the commercial health of the World Championship by making public their decisions to go to court.
One more time. Let's go.
On the other side of the Atlantic and under cloudy skies and threatening rain, the 45th Daytona 500 got underway. On pole for the big race, which started early because of the weather, was Jeff Green. Trouble on lap 36 for Jeff Burton. The catch can, which catches any overflow fuel put in during pit stops, popped off during the race, and he was penalised for that. Lap 58 signalled bad news for the number 12 car of Ryan Newman. He was tipped into the wall, lost a tyre and then got airborne. Newman's car flipped over 5 times, ending up with just one wheel, but Newman was unhurt.
Let me tell you, the way these cars are inside, he's like he's in a capsule in there.
Ride with Dale Jarrett behind the crash. The engine note doesn't change a bit as he keeps the throttle wide open despite the carnage around him.
To see out your windshield.
All morning.
The race was red flagged on lap 64 because of rain. The delay would last for more than an hour, and track drying vehicles were soon out on the track trying to get the course as dry as possible. One-time previous winner Michael Waltrip ran well all day. His number 15 car led the field for 54 of the first 85 laps.
15 laps to halfway.
Pole sitter Jeff Green in car number 30 wasn't so lucky. He spun after a tyre blowout and banged into the outside wall on the 95th lap. Green also wasn't injured. Defending champ Ward Burton also spun out on lap 107. He slid across the path of the traffic without hitting anyone and then crashed into the wall.
For the second time today. There's a big band of
then, with 109 laps completed, the race was stopped for a second time due to the rain. Waltrip was leading when the flag came out. Once officials decided the rain wouldn't stop, the race was declared over, the minimum of 100 laps having been run.
I thought that it would quit raining and they would dry it off, and I was ready for that challenge. But I told Buffy, I said, well, we don't need that. We won right now, so let's focus on that. Let's go ahead and try to win it right now. And then if they make us get in the car and go race, I'll worry about winning it then. And fortunately, Mother Nature decided we'd raced enough today.
After his win, Waltrip posed for photographs with a trophy, something he has now been able to do twice in 3 years. The Italian Ducati team is returning to motorcycle Grand Prix races, or MotoGP, after an absence of 30 years, with riders Troy Bayliss, a former Superbike world champion, and ex-250 world champ Loris Capirossi, hoping to mix it with current world champion Valentino Rossi on his mighty Honda. Ducati has dominated Superbike racing recently. The team won the Superbike Manufacturers' Championship 11 times in the last 12 years. Australian Troy Bayliss has ridden both bikes.
But you know, this motorcycle has come a long way in a short time. When we first started, it was very raw and there was a lot of work to do, and it's something I'm not really used to, but I've enjoyed it. It's been a big job, but now already the bike has proven very competitive, and Sepang went very well, and we look forward to the next test in Jerez and Estoril.
Loris Capirossi is happy to be racing with a Ducati factory. For an Italian, racing a Ducati in MotoGP is as good as racing a Ferrari in Formula One. Capirossi became the youngest ever world champion when he won the 125cc title at the tender age of 17 in 1990. He backed it up the next year and then switched to the 250 class, where he won the title in 1998. Since joining Ducati, Loris has produced lap times that would have had him on pole position last season at Jerez. After almost every test session, he has either bettered his own time set earlier on his two-stroke or bettered any time set by anyone during the last MotoGP season. The new bike, the Desmo Sedici, features a unique 90-degree V4 Desmo 16-valve engine and a stress-bearing frame adapted from Formula One. It heralds Ducati's return to Grand Prix racing after an absence of 30 years.
Yeah, it's good. You know, you spend a lot of time with different riders, and the last 5 years I've spent a lot of the time with the same guys. So I have a lot of new guys to learn to be around with, especially on the track. That's the most important thing. And but it's going to be very difficult. You know, there's eight riders out there that have been world champions in the past, so it's going to be interesting.
In pista e tutti I ragazzi del team qua sul palco con me.
The full Ducati team then joined the executives and riders. They've already done over 12,000 kilometres of testing, and a further 5,000 will be completed before the first round on April the 6th at Suzuka in Japan. The Ducati mechanics seem to have tested hard so the team can race easy. Loris is looking forward to his new job.
Personally, for me, I think it's perfect. It's unbelievable. It's a great opportunity for me to ride for Ducati. Ducati have a lot of experience, especially with the four-stroke engine. We're working, between us all, to take the maximum power from this bike. Then we can try our best.
His new teammate, Troy Bayliss, is also looking forward to what he sees as a great challenge. The 33-year-old from New South Wales in Australia is renowned for his aggression and spectacular riding style on the track. Is the MotoGP bike very different to the Superbike?
Well, there's a big difference. I spent 5 years on the Superbike. I was very comfortable. I felt like I was at home on my lounge chair. The new bike, it felt very different at the start. It's very precise. It needs a lot more attention as far as the setup goes. But I'm becoming more comfortable with it every time, and looking forward to the start of the year.
After the launch, the Ducati squad took part in the 3-day IRTA test at Jerez in Spain, then over the Portuguese circuit at Estoril, followed by Barcelona in Spain, before the first race in Japan. A few days later, and on the eve of the Jerez test session, 2 Yamaha teams revealed their new livery. Alex Barros and Olivier Jacques in the blue corner, and Marco Melandri and Carlos Checa in the red corner. Journalists and photographers flooded the Jerez pit lane, eager to see for themselves the 2003 versions of the MotoGP 4-strokes on the opening day of official testing for the Premier class. Brazilian Barros got through the interviews and out onto the circuit. He set the track alight on board both a 2- and a 4-stroke Honda last year. Barros duly set the fastest time of the day, ahead of his Yamaha colleague Carlos Checa of Spain. Japan's Shinya Nakano and Marco Melandri of Italy rounded off a good day at the office for Yamaha. Italian factory Aprilia has hired current Superbike world champ Colin Edwards, luring him away from Honda, who couldn't offer him a MotoGP ride. The Texan Tornado amazed everyone by going 3rd fastest in the test session on the all-new Aprilia Cube, although he was over a second off the pace set by the flying Barros. His was the only non-Yamaha in the top 5. Behind reigning 250 champ Melandri came the Ducati of Loris Capirossi. All his racing experience has been on 2-strokes with little engine braking. Capirossi has adapted very quickly to the 4-stroke style of engine power and braking. Testing and racing are 2 different worlds, as are qualifying and winning, but with Capirossi, Ducati looks set to maybe challenge for the MotoGP championship. American former 500cc world champion Kenny Roberts had a dismal season last year with his Suzuki, but the machine has been totally reworked for this year, and the only world champ son of a world champ will be chasing a return to form. He and his teammate John Hopkins finished 9th and 10th, 2 seconds off the pace. Australian Gary McCoy, renowned for his lurid slides on a 2-stroke Yamaha, was plagued by injuries last year and has moved to the fledgling Kawasaki team with his countryman Andrew Pitt. Kawasaki have been out of Grand Prix racing for 20 years, but had little success in superbike racing. Italian Marco Melandri became the youngest 250cc world champion last year, but has adapted to the 990cc 4-stroke Yamaha to finish the test session 5th fastest, just 1/100th of a second slower than his experienced teammate Nakano. Ex-125cc world champion Manuel Poggiali, who's moved up to the 250cc class to ride an Aprilia, is already setting the pace among the quarter litres. The San Marino teenager was fastest, 1/2 a second ahead of Frenchman Randy Duponnet. But the Honda team, with world champ Valentino Rossi, skipped the Spanish gathering and tested at Sepang in Malaysia. The Indoor Trials World Championship moved to Austria, and the crowds turned out in force. 6,500 fans filled the Vienna City Hall for the 7th of 12 rounds to see if 20-year-old Spanish sensation Adam Raga could maintain his grip on this year's title race. However, first up to challenge his superiority was his compatriot and defending world indoor champion Albert Capestany. Capestany and Raga even hail from the same hometown, Tarragona, and after Capestany successfully made the 4th and last place in the final with 8 penalty points, he rode his beater into 2nd place overall after conceding only 2 penalties. A great comeback from Capestany after a hugely disappointing 6th place in Turin 2 weeks before. Graham Jarvis of Great Britain negotiates the rocks through the water feature, but falls at the last hurdle as he somersaults over the handlebars of his Sherco. And although he comes back to earth with a painful bump, he safely cleared the rocky terrain. He was docked 12 penalty points as a result and didn't make the final. The name Dougie Lampkin is synonymous with trials riding and world championships. The 26-year-old Englishman is aiming for a 6th world indoor title, and it was obvious why, as he successfully negotiated a route over the line of skips filled with compressed rubbish on his Montesa. However, overbalancing on one part of the course meant 4 points conceded and 3rd place overall. No victory for Lampkin, but yet another career podium appearance. That gave Raga his chance, and he seized the opportunity with both gloves. The standings leader glided over the crates on his gas machine in a magnificent example of balance and power. He conceded just 1 point to register his 3rd consecutive win of the season and his 5th victory in 7 events. His 2nd lap in the final was pointless yet perfect. No penalty points docked, and the crowd in the Vienna City Hall rose to applaud the superstar. Raga's delight was obvious as he accepted the silverware and garlands for the 3rd week in succession. He extended his lead to 12 points over Lamkin and 26 over Kabastani. Actor Leonardo DiCaprio is using his celebrity status to urge American lawmakers and car company executives to support clean air laws and build more fuel-efficient vehicles as a way of staving off global warming.
We're all here to keep the pressure on our politicians and our corporations to recognize the drastic implications of global warming. The word warming sounds almost inviting. That in a world 20 years from now, we will all be living in a tropical paradise, where the extent of our problems will be pondering which SPF sunscreen to use. But don't be fooled by semantics. Thousands of climate scientists agree that global warming is not only the most threatening environmental problem, but one of the greatest challenges facing all of humanity.
DiCaprio puts his money where his mouth is, too.
I drove here today in my hybrid vehicle that gets 50 miles to the gallon and has less than half of the pollution of a normal car. The technology to make safer, cleaner cars and SUVs is here today. Pollution-free renewable energy sources from wind and solar power are also available today. The environmental age is here. Let's reduce our dependency on oil, foreign and domestic. Let's develop a global politics that accelerates the transition to clean fuels and sustainable energy from renewable sources.
The event was organised by the Natural Resources Defence Council, a non-profit activist group. The event was a prelude to a free concert by the Rolling Stones, their first charity performance since a concert in California in 1969 that left several injured after a riot in the audience. Toyota's Prius hybrid uses a small engine to charge batteries, which power a high-efficiency electric motor. As a result, the petrol engine isn't running constantly, but will cut in automatically to provide extra power for acceleration or climbing hills. Unlike Honda's Insight, the Prius has 4 seats. However, the true emission-free vehicle will probably use hydrogen fuel cells, which convert hydrogen into electricity with only water coming out of the exhaust. Most major manufacturers have working prototypes as they seek to make the fuel cell, the part that turns the stored hydrogen into energy, smaller, more efficient and cheaper. The United States is the biggest contributor to greenhouse gases, emitting 25% of all man-made carbon dioxide worldwide. Unless efforts are made to reduce emissions, global temperatures could rise by 5 to 10 degrees by the end of the century. We'll end on that sobering thought, but as the Formula One rebellion unfolds, bikers get ready for the new season, and trials riders scale new heights, make sure you catch next week's Drive.